Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Bohannon. I'm an Education and Outreach Liaison with Okie 811, and today we'll be covering what the markings mean. Should you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to post them in the Q&A or the chat section, and we can go ahead and get started. Jump right on in. A little bit more about what Okie 811 is that we're a free statewide notification service that helps prevent damages to underground utilities by connecting the excavators with the operators of those utilities. And really what our role is as a communication hub between the two. We would like to emphasize that we do not locate or mark underground utilities. Now, I'd like to share an overview of what we'll be discussing in the webinar today. We'll be reviewing the American Public Works Association color code, including some examples of what those may look like out in the field. We'll discuss how utility marks themselves work with a clear definition of the tolerance zone. We will discuss stakeholder responsibilities defined by the Oklahoma Underground Damage Prevention Act regarding those utility marks, as well as how those marks should reflect the locate request itself, the ticket that you put in, and positive response to confirm that everything is complete. So let's jump right on in. So here we can see an example of the American Public Works Association color code. You can see a variety of colors. White is defined as proposed excavation, whereas white lining the site is an industry best practice, and that shows the locators where you intend to excavate. Pink are temporary survey marks, providing the approximate location of those utilities. Survey tickets and markings are not valid for excavation. When excavation is ready to begin, a standard ticket must be submitted. Red is for electric lines, cable conduits, and lighting cables. So the red for electric. Yellow resembles gas, oil, steam, petroleum, or gaseous materials. So we can really condense that into oil and gas. Orange is typically used for communication lines, alarms, signal lines, and other cables conduit. Blue is used to mark potable water. Purple markings indicate reclaimed water, irrigation, and slurry lines. Finally, green indicates those sewer and drain lines. So every utility within this has its own color coding with the American Public Works Association color code. Now let's go ahead and jump into some examples of what those may look like overall. So some examples of those markings. Here we can see an example of a potable water line changing direction, and you can see how these markings are spaced. The color blue indicates that it is a potable water. And you can see here how that directional change appears. Now, these markings are important to understand the scope with your scope of work. They show the approximate location and direction of those utilities. Look at another example. So here in this example, it's in conduit markings and of communications and electric. And you can see that orange being communication and the red being the electric lines. And you can see multiple lines, which would indicate a greater space taken by those utilities. So each marking serves a different utility, and as such, the markings reflect the various services to the community. Additionally, the marks can provide you with more information about the utilities and how they might take different paths, shapes, or potential size. So in this example, we can see a 6-inch lateral gas connection and a two-phase primary for electric. And remember, we talked about that yellow indicating with the American Public Works Association color code being gas petroleum products. And so you can see there's an indication here of the potential size that is indicated. Now, looking at utility marks and the tolerance zone itself. With utility markings, locating and marking, it's not an exact science. Marking can be affected by weather, equipment, ticket requirements, state of emergency, where in state of emergencies, utilities refocus resources for repairing or damage prevention during that specific emergency. The tolerance zone itself. With the tolerance zone in Oklahoma, it is defined as 24 inches from the outside edge of the marked underground utility. And within this zone, it is important to use soft digging methods, making sure that non-mechanized methods are being used. So hand tools, hydrovacking. Usually, you'll have to visually confirm the exact location of the utility line should you plan to work around it. If you plan to work outside of the tolerance zone, that's a different state to take. One thing that is very important is to always proceed slowly and cautiously within the tolerance zone to avoid damaging those utilities. Please note that if you do find a utility in an unexpected area or excavate a utility that is found beyond that tolerance zone and is not marked, stop the work immediately and contact OP 811. Here I have a visual example of that tolerance zone, and you may assume that the marking could be over here or here. And we can see those 24 inches on either side of that approximate utility. A story that we do have here that we use quite frequently is that there was a crew installing a fence. They were planning on setting posts near a marked gas line. Thus, they used soft digging techniques to expose the line so they wouldn't be directly striking it or unaware of its presence within that area of the tolerance zone. And they found that the utility itself was 18 inches from the original marking. And so this is why it is very important to respect that tolerance zone, as the marking may be over here and the utility ending up in a different, not necessarily directly underneath those lines. So never assume that that line is going to be directly under the markings. Always respect the tolerance zone. Soft digging at the marks is required to protect people and infrastructure. Taking a deeper look at the Oklahoma Underground Facilities Damage Prevention Act, commonly referred to as the OUFDPA. It is in the Oklahoma statutes Title 63, Public Health and Safety, in Section 142. Within this act, there are a variety of definitions, including underground utilities, required wait times, the tolerance zone, locating, and the color codes themselves. The enforcement of the OUFDPA falls under the Oklahoma Corporation Commission, and they regulate compliance for excavation near underground utilities, specifically with a focus on regulated pipelines to ensure, again, that public safety and infrastructure protection. This, again, is all about making sure that we make it home at the end of the day, that everybody stays safe and can continue their work on another day. Looking at some stakeholder responsibilities, we'll start with OKI 811. Primary responsibilities are to receive and distribute locate requests and maintain records. However, we additionally provide tools and resources for safe excavation, including our excavator guide, our certification programs, safety days. And with that, we also aim to educate and train individuals on the OUFDPA and safe excavation practices. Excavators, though, have some pretty strong responsibilities as well when it comes to the markings and submitting tickets. So, as we know, excavators must submit accurate locate requests and provide specific and clear information regarding what their work is going to entail. Waiting the required time, that way the utility operators will have their locators come and place the marks for where that excavation will take place. And respect to the tolerance zone and markings, reviewing positive response, and using soft digging techniques within 24 inches of those marks. So that tolerance zone, the positive response, and waiting time along with those accurate requests. Utility operators are also stakeholders with defined responsibilities, including responding to ticket requests within a given period, locating and marking the approximate horizontal location of the underground facilities using the correct color codes and within the timeframes given, and to provide that positive response with the correct codes assigned. So that's a lot of talk about the positive response. So let's get a little bit more clarification on that. Positive response is the official notice that the utility operator provides the excavator. It is a reply to the locate request, providing the excavator with information about the locate, including if the site was fully or partially marked, if there were any issues, if there was a watch and protect issue, that kind of information. You should always, always, always ensure that the positive response reflects what marks are present at the work site. If the marks do not match the positive response, stop the work and contact OKI 811. Now, we did go through this information fairly quickly, but what we have reviewed today with our markings is that we've covered the American Public Works Association color code, including some examples. We discussed utility marks themselves and a clear definition of the tolerance zone, 24 inches either side of those markings. We talked more about stakeholder responsibilities defined by the Oklahoma Underground Damage Prevention Act. That's the OCC, OKI 811, excavator responsibilities, and utility operator responsibilities. We also looked at how those marks should reflect with the locate request and the positive response provided, just to confirm that everything has been completed. Now, we want to provide some additional resources. Here we have the OKI 811 Learning Hub, which will have a variety of resources, such as our online certification program, a variety of tools for homeowners and professional excavators. Here, you can also branch out to the full extent of our site, which will have the ticketing portal, as well as our excavator guides. So it is a great resource to have on hand if you plan on doing any excavation. Additionally, we have our safety days that take place all over the state, including Enid, which will be coming up here in a few weeks. We have Tulsa, Lawton, and so many more. OKI 811 is dedicated to providing all these resources in both English and Spanish, including Spanish safety days. So please be sure to check out these pages and share them with anybody who works in the industry of excavation or around infrastructure. These are excellent, excellent tools to have in the toolbox. With that being said, we'll give it just one more moment. If anybody would like to scan any of these QR codes and have these pages as a resource. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to education@oki811.org, and we'll be happy to provide you with more information. With all that being said, go ahead and have a wonderful Wednesday, and thank you again for joining.